Hello and welcome back. This is your host Rose, aka Connie Cho from Roseiryu Productions, and we are continuing with the Harpocrates 1,000 Tomes. A defensive gateway to Sunbrock's holy. It was originally a purely military outpost, a towering bastion constructed to prevent land-based assaults on the capital from the southwest. To this day, a heavily guarded checkpoint ensures that none can pass through the wall without prior authorization, and as such, the need to linger here prior to entering has led to the rise of a thriving market and various other commercial enterprises on the wall's southern side. The garrison, however, along with the inns and brothels most of the soldiers frequent, as well as the residences of the nobles who make Northreach their home, remain on the northern side. The Vale, Northreach's premier house of companionship. While it is frequented mainly by Sunbrock's nobility and military, Lady Isabel welcomes all with the desire, and the coin, to partake of the pleasures her skilled courtesans and courtiers offer. Few establishments in the empire are as well loved or as oft visited. Moor, a farming village located in the rye fields of the Royal Meadows not far from the Sambucua capital of Oriflame. Her residents harbor a strong hatred for bearers, more even than elsewhere in the empire, making it a very dangerous place to visit for those who bear the brand. The Battle of Belinus Tor. The Battle of Belinus Tor was a conflict fought between the Holy Empire of Sunbrock and the Kingdom of Wallode in the year 873. Having lost vital territory to Sambucua forces 8 years earlier in the Battle of the Twin Realms, the Walloders launched an assault on the eponymous peak, looking to regain a foothold in the imperial lands on the opposite side of the Strait of Altha. Both sides fielded their icons, and in the ensuing showdown between Odin and Bahamut, an entire Sambucua legion was lost, and the Walloders regained their outposts on Storm. The Great Wood. The vast forest in the southwestern part of Sunbrook. Wildlife thrives here, but the delicately balanced ecosystem has been thrown into disarray in recent years by the encroachment of the blight, and the beasts driven before it. So dangerous has it become that travelers rarely venture here anymore. Orrible Downs. In southwestern Sunbrook, where the Great Wood ends, lie the secluded meadows of Orrible. Here the soil is rich and the climate temperate, while the sloped terrain provides ample runoff for rain, making the location perfect for the growing of wine grapes, something the residents of nearby Lost Wing take very seriously. Norvent Valley, an expansive river valley that cuts through southern central Sunbrook. The fortress of Caer Norvent rises along its eastern edge. Glorious. A key strategic point in central Sunbrook, its location just south of Oriflame makes it a vital first line of defense against any assault on the Holy Capital. The road from Northreach to Caer Norvent and beyond to the Crystal Belt bisects the area, ensuring a constant traffic of Sambucua soldiers and traveling merchants. The Dragon's Eyrie, a gently sloping plain stretching east from the Sambucua checkpoint of Northreach. As the name implies, it is heavily populated with all manner of wild worms, and as such the lands remain relatively unspoiled by mankind. The King's Fall, located in western Sambucua, near the Roseiryu border, the King's Fall is a towering cataract fed by the waters of multiple converging tributaries. Though these waters long played an integral part in the lives of nearby settlers, an influx of displaced beasts fleeing from the blight has forced many to abandon their claim to the resource. Eye of the Tempest. A raging vortex borne upon Benedicta Harmon's descent into madness and loss of control over her icon Garuda. Its power is such that not only our entire village is swept up by its passing, but the very ground beneath it is gouged and disfigured. Here once did a rage storm born of dominance madness, a storm within the icons Garuda and Ifrit clashed, and from which only one would emerge. Their struggle saw the landscape raised as holds, farms, and villages that had stood for ages were in but mere moments struck from existence. Now all that remains is black and waste, somehow even more lifeless than the blighted deadlands. Belinus Tor. Named for the highest of its peaks, Sembrox Belinus Tor is a region of rolling, grassy hills, slightly inland of where the Strait of Altha meets the Sea of Grace. In the year 873, it was the site of a decisive battle in the kingdom of Woloda's failed bid to regain a foothold in Storm. The Breadbasket. A region overlooking the Strait of Altha in the eastern part of Sembrox. The bounty provided by its rich soil fed the empire for generations, until the ever-encroaching blight intervened, displacing thousands in the process, a disturbance which played no small part in the troubles that were later to engulf the imperial capital. The Dalmatian Republic. A nation formed from a federation of 5 smaller states, it is located in the southern half of the continent of Storm and has its capital at Randella. It is also home to the mother crystal known as Drake's Fang. There is no official state religion, and citizens are free to worship as they please. Dalmatia's key political entity is the Parliament, which is formed of ministers representing each of the states, with the Prime Minister as its head. A nation formed from a federation of 5 smaller states. It is located in the southern half of the continent of Storm and has its capital at Randella. Also home to the mother crystal known as Drake's Fang, inside which stands Castle Dazbog, home of Hugo Kupka, dominant of Titan and warden of Earth. Castle Dazbog, a castle built within the dome-like mountain that contains Drake's Fang. It is the primary residence of Hugo Kupka, dominant of Titan, and is lavishly appointed to suit his extravagant tastes. Fort Zenertra, a stronghold situated at the western end of the Nysa Defile in the Dalmatian Republic. In the year 873, it served as the site of a meeting convened by the Dalmatians with their Woloder allies in an attempt to enlist their aid in driving back the Ironblood, who had been a thorn in their side since the Battle of the Twin Realms 8 years before. The Men of the Fist, Dalmatian's standing army. While officially an organ of the Republic, each of its 5 states is granted relatively autonomy with regard to the management of its troops. Aside from certain specialized squads, battle deployments are mostly comprised of small units employing a mixture of foot soldiers and battle mages. The former are known and feared for their curved swords and prodigious axes, and deadly skill with which they wield them. The Republican Parliament, the highest council of government of the Republic of Dalmatia. 7 ministers are responsible for ruling the nation. Though their will is often molded to that of their permanent economic advisor, Hugo Kupka, who leverages his power as the dominant of Titan to shape the Republic's policy. The Battle of Nysa was a short yet bloody clash between the Iron Republic and the Republic of Dalmatia in the year 873. The Dalmatians, hoping to force an end to their long-running conflict with the Iron Blood, had convened a council at Zenertra stronghold and entreated their Woloder allies to aid them in their cause. However, talks soon broke down, and the Dalmatians were left with no choice but to rely once more on the power of the mighty Titan, to whom they already owed a considerable debt. Excuse me. Thus was the stage set for a showdown between Titan and Shiva, the Ironblood's own icon, in which losses on both sides were too many to count. Zenertra Consult, looking to bring an end to their long-running conflict with the Iron Kingdom, and the Dalmacs convened a council with their Woloder allies at Zenertra stronghold. However, the Woloders were unwilling to concede to the Dalmacs' requests, leaving the Republic no choice but to field its dominant, Hugo Kupka. In so doing, Parliament further indebted itself to this already powerful player in national politics. The Nysa Defile, a deep arid valley located in the eastern part of the Dalmatian Republic. During the Battle of the Twin Realms in 865, it was the site of repeated skirmishes as the Iron Kingdom attempted to make incursions into Dalmatian territory. The Kingdom of Woloda, the sole surviving nation in Ash. Woloda has its capital at Stonehir, home to the mother crystal of Drake's Spine. A warlike land, its considerable serves to keep neighboring countries at bay. While Woloda does maintain a notional alliance with the Dalmatian Republic in Southern Storm, it is very much a marriage of convenience. Not all are deterred. However, the constant need to fight off hordes of beastmen prevents the royalists from launching a full incursion into Storm. Sole surviving nation in Ash, Woloda has its capital at Stonehir, home to the mother crystal of Drake's Spine. Its ruler Barnabas Thalmer, dominant of Odin and warden of darkness, recently dispatched units of intelligencers to Storm with others to scout ahead prior to a full-scale invasion. Having ceded territory to the Holy Empire of Simbrook in the Battle of the Twin Realms in the year 865, the Woloders launched an attack on Belenus Tor in 873 with the intent of regaining their lost foothold on the continent across the strait. The Royal Knights of Woloda. The Kingdom of Woloda's main battlefield forces, also known as the King's Guard, while they ultimately answer to King Barnabas, the Knights' orders are usually issued by their Lord Commander. The Royal Intelligencers, a special unit led by Benedicta Harman, dominant of Garuda, are a notable exception to this rule, reporting as they do directly to the King. The Royal Intelligencers. An elite unit of the Royal Knights of Woloda led by Benedicta Harman, who lead clandestine incursions deep into the territory of enemy nations for myriad purposes, espionage, and assassination chief among them. Benedicta Harman, who leads clandestine incursions deep into the territory of enemy nations, unlike Woloda's main battlefield forces, whose orders are usually issued by their Lord Commander, the intelligencers reported directly to the King. Or at least they did, until their dissolution in the aftermath of Cid and Clive's surprise attack on Cair Norvent. Thalen, a mining settlement in the southern part of the continent of Ash. It is known for the adamantite it produces, a resource highly prized for its unrivaled durability, but this is both a blessing and a curse, leading as it is to repeated attacks by marauding orcs over the years. Though previously well protected, the encroachment of the Blight has seen citizens deserting in their droves, leaving the town ever more vulnerable to attack. The Iron Kingdom, an archipelago nation situated off the west coast of Storm, with its capital at Krieg Loiste. I don't know how to pronounce that. Krieg Loiste, the mother crystal Drake's Breath, rises from a volcanic island situated just within its borders, and is worshipped as a god, just as the state religion the crystalline Orthodox dictates. This same religion decrees the use of magic to be an anathema, and the bearers and dominants who use it to be sinful aberrations, leading to even greater discrimination than that suffered by their brethren on the mainland. Given their stated desire to control all the mothers, the Ironbloods' attitude to other nations is one of indelible antagonism. Also known as the local tongue, in Haran, the Iron Kingdom is an archipelago nation situated off the west coast of the Storm, with its capital at Krieg Loiste. The mother crystal Drake's Breath rises from a volcanic island situated just within, or without, its borders, depending on whom you ask, and has been the subject of long-standing conflict between the Ironblood and the neighboring duchy of Roseiryu. The Iron Kingdom's inhabitants shun any contact with outsiders, which has given rise to a unique, if largely inward-looking culture. Drake's Breath, one of Valistea's 5 remaining mother crystals, Located on the volcanic isle known to the Ironblood as Bain-Leolad, in the seas between Rosaria and the Iron Kingdom. Though its occupation can historically be traced to the duchy, control of the crystal was recently wrested from Rosaria's grasp by the Crusade following a series of bitter conflicts. The Iron Crusade. The fighting forces of the Iron Kingdom ultimate command rests with the king, who issues orders directly to the commanders of each of his battalions. Iron soldiers generally prefer any heavy clubs and great axes over swords and other lighter weapons. This rather brutal approach is indicative of their overall attitude, which has earned them a reputation on the continent as savage, if somewhat primitive warriors. The Boiling Crusade. A surprise attack launched by the Iron Kingdom on the Duchy of Rosaria in the year 860. Rosaria was critically weakened at the time, having lost Archduke Elwin Rosfield and been plunged into chaos in the aftermath of the attack on Phoenix Gate. The Ironblood unleashed a wave of murderous destruction on the Rosarians and returned home with human spoils in the form of countless young women and children, Joe Warwick among them. The Crystalline Dominion. A tiny independent state straddling the continents of Storm and Ash. Its capital Twinside is built on the tiny isles of Ark from which its mother crystal Drake's Tail rises. The lack of a dominant has seen the Dominion become the subject of constant maneuvering over the years, both politically and military, and it was only through the recent convening of a Council of All Nations that a non-aggression treaty towards the neutral body was forged, and a tenuous stability amongst century-old rivals achieved. Bandits! Those who make their coin by stealing from others, or from their corpses. Banditry is outlawed in every corner of the realm, so those who turn to it must make their beds far from the eyes of the constabulary, often setting up camp in abandoned villages. Some brigands will elect to band into small armies that together they may have the strength to make raids upon towns and villages in search of food and funds they need to survive. The Strait of Altha, the narrow channel to the north of the Crystalline Dominion that separates the continents of Storm and Ash, with Sunbrook to the west, Willow to the east, and the Dominion to the south. Its shores are never short of soldiers or political tension. The Northern Territories. A bitterly cold region in the northern reaches of the continent of Storm. It was originally home to the mother crystal known as Drake's Eye, around which a series of small nations sprang up. Nations whose belligerence proved troublesome for Rosaria over the centuries. In time, however, the mother crystal's power dwindled, and with it the power of these warlike nations, with the blight encroaching on their territory ever more. The remaining tribes were reunited and pacified by Archduke Elwin Rosfield of Rosaria in the year 854. The Gregorian Church. The state religion of the Holy Empire of Simbrook, whose followers worship the goddess Gregor as the one true deity. At the church's head stands the Holy Emperor, voted into office by his fellow cardinals, and supposedly their equal, though this is widely recognized to be a convenient fiction. The followers of Gregor worship dragons as sacred servants of their goddess, and since the founding days of the empire have both doted and depended upon them. The Crystalline Orthodox. A religion dedicated to the worship of the mother crystals, its priesthood enjoyed great power, with the patriarch, leader, and chief shepherd of the faithful, the most powerful of all. While best known as the state religion of the insular Iron Kingdom, it was once practiced throughout Valisthea. To its believers, the mother crystals are literal gods, and the wasteful expenditure of ether through the use of magic is strictly forbidden. As such, those who do use magic, dominance, and bearers both, are seen as subhuman abominations. The Battle of the Twin Realms was a conflict fought between the Holy Empire of Simbrook and the Kingdom of Wolode in the year 865. Sambraquois forces, with the power of the icon Bahamut on their side, took to the Strait of Altha back from the Wolode, putting an end to a blockade that had lasted several decades, the Woloders looking to hold back the Sambraquois advances by any means necessary, formed an alliance with the Dalmatian Republic. who themselves were waging war against the Iron Kingdom on the Western Front and prevented the empire from progressing any further. Mysteries of the Realm. The Mother Crystals. Though the people of Valisthea rely on the crystal mined from these mountains in their everyday lives and flock to the aether-rich lands around them in pursuit of their blessing, Sid posits that it is in fact the Mother Crystals and their ability to draw aether from the earth that is the reason for the Deadlands' advance. The few who learn the truth are hunted down by those in possession of power, those whose power rests on their control of this crucial source. Enormous glassy mountains, 5 of which tower over the lands of Valisthea, they are the source of all the crystals that the people of the Twins rely on in their everyday lives. Not only that, but the lands surrounding them are rich with aether, making the magics the crystals cast even more potent. For these reasons, great nations have sprung up around each mother crystal and have long warred with each other for the possession of their blessings. The Deadlands. Barren waste bereft of aether, where no life stirs and magic is all but unusable. Here both earth and water are stained black, preventing any seed from quickening. In recent years the blight has spread ever more widely, displacing whole nations before it, driving once peaceable fauna to violent desperation, and leaving silent devastation in its wake. One of the most valuable materials known to mankind, thanks to its ability to channel ambient ether from the air, allowing those with an innate power to do so to ease magics, and as most Valistheans cannot live without magic. Its supply and distribution is heavily regulated by governments across the Twins. A given shard can only channel a certain amount of ether before it shatters, so the need for new crystals is incessant. Thanks to its ability to channel ambient ether from the air, allowing those who's without an innate power to do so to cast magics, and as most Valistheans cannot live without magic, its supply and distribution is heavily regulated by governments across the Twins. Though the penalties for illicit trade in crystal are severe, with demand far outstripping supply, many still dabble in the black market. Crystal rations. Shards of crystal small enough to be held in the hand, which allow those who are not born bearers to cast magics. The nations of the Twins see such shards mined from the mother crystals and distributed to the populace, so that every man and woman of good character, bearers, criminals, and other undesirables not included, might enjoy the gift of magic. It is common for people to keep them about their persons in a protective case. Municipal shards. Large shards of crystal that are entrusted to towns and cities across Valisthea in order to serve the populace, where those shards rationed out to individuals might suffice to fill a cup or light an oven. Municipal shards fill wells, fire forges, and light the streets of the great cities of the Twins. Ether, the life force of the land and the source of all magic. The amount of ether a spell consumes depends on its strength, with those manifesting more potent forces over a wider area coming at a greater loss. Larger crystals can channel more ether than smaller ones, and thus can be used to cast more powerful magics. One might use a small ration shard to fill a grilled fish. Sorry, did I just say that? What I meant was, one might use a small ration shard to grill a fish, but would require a large municipal crystal to fire a blacksmith's forge. Magic. The art of channeling ether to make one's imagination manifest. This can take the aspect of one of the 8 elements of fire, water, wind, earth, ice, thunder, light, and dark, or, more rarely, be unaspected. While bearers and dominants can cast spells at will, others require a crystal to do so. Magic is a part of everyday life for the people of Valisthea, making it all but unlivable when they are deprived of its gift. The crystal's curse. The price bearers and dominants pay for channeling ether through their bodies, the gradual petrification of their flesh. It does not affect those who use a crystal to cast magics, beginning with a stiffness and ache in their extremities. As the curse progresses, limbs are rendered immobile and the pain unbearable. At last, the victim turns completely to stone and their body crumbles into dust. There is no known cure. First shield. Title granted to the mightiest and most stalwart shield of the Roseiryu army. The first shield is entrusted with the personal protection of the dominant of the Phoenix, and is gifted a portion of the icon's power over a flame, a boon known as the Blessing of the Phoenix. Excuse me. The Blessing of the Phoenix, the boon Joshua bestowed upon his brother upon Clive's ordination as first shield, allowing him to wield fire aspect in magic without a crystal. It has long been custom in Roseiryu for the dominant of the Phoenix to share a part of their power in this way, performing this rite of rejuvenation upon those they appoint as their protectors, that they might serve them the better. Dominant. Those within whom sleeps the power of an icon. Though they look and think no differently to any other man or woman, they can not only cast elemental magics without a crystal, but also transform themselves into beasts of world-shattering strength at any moment. There is only ever one dominant for every icon, a new dominant only awaking after the previous dies. Some awaken at birth, while others are chosen later in life. But once one is chosen, one's life changes forever. Those within whom sleeps the power of an icon. Though they look and think no differently to any other man or woman, they can not only cast elemental magics with the crystal, but also transform themselves into beasts of world-shattering strength at any moment, a quality for which they are honored, worshipped, and feared the realm over. Icon. Magical beings of godlike strength who dwell within human hosts known as dominants, only emerging when the dominant primes. History records 8 icons in total, each with a unique elemental affinity. It is commonly held that 2 icons of the same element cannot coexist, but as none has ever witnessed all of these rare creatures together, the conjecture is yet to be proved. Magical beings of godlike strength who dwell within human hosts, known as dominants, only emerging when the dominant primes. History records 8 icons in total, each with a unique elemental affinity, one warden each, of fire, water, thunder, ice, wind, earth, light, and darkness. The common belief that 2 icons of the same element cannot coexist was shaken by the appearance of a second icon of fire during the Imperial attack on the Phoenix Gate. Priming, the act of a dominant transforming their living flesh into that of their icon. Dominants most often prime during times of war, using the immense strengths of their icons to turn the tides of battle, though it is usually done deliberately, the dominant remaining in control of the icon even when primed. On occasion, a dominant will lose control of their powers and see their icon run riot. Semi-priming, the act of a dominant calling upon a part of their icon's power without fully transforming into the legendary beast itself. It does not require nearly as much ether as to fully prime, taking less of a toll on the dominant's flesh. Upon semi-priming, the host takes on some aspects of their icon, sprouting wings or becoming clad in stone. Bearers. A person with the power to cast magics without a crystal. In Valisthea, men and women who awaken as bearers are enslaved. They are marked with a brand upon their cheek and used as tools, a cheaper alternative to the scarce and precious shards. This system of slavery has persisted for centuries and has become so ingrained in Valisthean life that few take pity upon the bearer's plight, seeing them as less than human. A person with the power to cast magics without of crystal. In Valisthea, men and women who awaken as bearers are enslaved, branded with a mark on their cheek that leads some to call them by the pejorative moniker branded. Though their powers do not begin to approach those of the almighty dominants, they too suffer from the crystal's curse, gradually turning to stone over a lifetime of channeling aether for others. Branded soldier. Bearers forced to fight for the nations that enslaved them. Able to cast powerful magics yet entirely disposable, they are often placed on the front lines in battle or assigned to highly dangerous scouting or assassination missions. Bearers forced to fight for the nations that enslaved them. To stymie the urge to flee, the penalty for desertion is death, and soldiers are encouraged to keep a close watch on each other to prevent others from doing so, the brand upon a soldier's cheek presenting an additional obstacle, and so most of them follow their orders, turning steadily to stone with each draw on the aether, to lose one's life to the curse being lauded as a hero's death. The brand. The mark applied to the cheek of bearers, identifying them as something other than human. The great nations of Valisthea have a long-standing accord to brand their bearers in this way, that the slaves might be traded across borders. The mark applied to the cheeks of bearers across Valisthea, identifying them as something other than human, newborn babes are checked in at birth, those who are found to be bearers being branded and taken into custody of the state. Rarely, bearers evade this test, either because their parents hide them, the testers are lax in their duties, or their powers do not awaken until later. Yet most do not remain unbranded for long. Branded. A common pejorative term for bearers marked with the brand. Newborn babes are tested at birth, and those found to have the knack are branded on the cheek and taken into the custody of the state. Slave masters, those who own and manage bearer slaves. A bearer must always obey the orders of his or her master, and are largely forbidden from acting independently, even from speaking without express permission when it is necessary to relinquish supervision of a bearer, such as when dispatching one on an errand. Masters will often affix the emblem of their house or business to the slave's clothing, that they are not mistaken for an escapee. The liberation of bearers, that which Cid and his allies strive to do so. Save bearers from slavery. To this end, they gather information about masters who most mistreat their property, that they might focus the rescue efforts on those most in need. Freed bearers are brought back to the safety of the hideaway, and though many are unsure what to do with their newfound freedom, the combination of a warm welcome, warm food, and a warm bed helps to calm their cares. The Fallen, an ancient yet highly advanced civilization, whose relics, said to be the remains of airships that once soared through the skies, can be found across the length and breadth of Valisthea. Cid's hideaway is but one of many settlements to take a fallen ruin as its foundation, taking advantage of the sturdiness of the ceramics, which are stronger than steel. They are not, however, immune to the passage of time, and so the hideaway is in need of constant repairs. Be right back. Okay, back. But anyways, The Fallen, which you've probably already read this while I was on BRB. An ancient yet highly advanced civilization whose relics can be found across the length and breadth of Valisthea. The material from which these relics are constructed is far sturdier than steel and cannot be worked by modern methods. So the people of the modern day have elected to build inside and around them instead. An ancient yet highly advanced civilization, whose relics said to be the remains of an airship that once soared through the skies, can be found across the length and breadth of Valisthea. Sid's Hideaway is but one of the many settlements to take a fallen ruin as its foundation. Taking advantage of the sturdiness of the ceramics, which are stronger than steel, they are not, however, immune to the passage of time, and so the hideaway is in need of constant repairs. Airship. Legend has it that the people of the Fallen once sailed through the skies in the bellies of these ships, though all now lie shattered and silent on the surface below. The town of Lostwing is built around each such ruin. Arete Stone, a mysterious ceramic tablet that stands in the hideaway of a similar construction to other relics of the Fallen, yet seemingly not a part of the airship proper. Its imposing appearance suggests some important function that had been lost to time. Whatever strange secrets lies within, it seems to react to Clive's presence and urges him to unlock his hidden potential. Obelisks. Ancient relics found across Valisthea. Their construction closely resembles the airships of the Fallen, but unlike them they do not appear to have fallen from the sky, rather to have stood in place since time immemorial. They illuminate when Clive approaches, though for what reason it is unknown. Excuse me. After once being lit, they continue to shine with the same blue glow day and night, making them ideal for use as waypoints. The Continental Accord, an international pact made at the dawn of the present era in which such matters as the treatment of bearers and the establishment of a realm-wide currency were laid out. It formed the basis of much of Valisthean society as it stands today, including the branding of bearers and their status as non-persons. It also put in place a universal calendar, marking a symbolic fresh start for mankind, albeit one which put magic users at a crippling disadvantage. The Valisthean calendar, the dating system used throughout the Twins, which marks the years of the realm that have passed since the signing of the Continental Accord some 800 years ago. In centuries since, nations have risen and fallen, and the concord between them has faltered, but the calendar persists. The Roseiryu National Anthem. Perhaps the most beloved ditty of the duchy, the Roseiryu National Anthem was written for the occasion of the new nation's founding, and is filled with the patriotic imagery of rolling meadows, rising flames, and stirring song. It was oft heard raising the rafters of ducal alehouses, particularly close to closing time, where disputes over the lyrics to the less practiced third verse would occasionally end in fisticuffs. The Ancient Mural, a wall painting found in the depths of the poetry under Phoenix Gate. Who created it and for what purpose is unknown, but the celestial being in the center suggests some connection to a long-lost religion. The Founder. Fear and uncertainty reigned in those early years following the sins of Dizimekis. Sorry. Anyone that knows how to pronounce that, please tell me. Not wanting to further incur the wrath of the heavens, the few who survived the fall took to wandering the land, spurning magic and staying to the shadows, and so they lived for decades. One man, however, grew tired of this life. if it could be called that, and after bidding his companions farewell, climbed a grassy knoll overlooking a forest of beech and alder. Here he gathered a pile of rubble and used it to build a humble shelter in which he spent the night. The next morning, however, instead of abandoning his work, as was his pupil's wont, he gathered more rocks, adding to the structure until the shelter had become a shack. This he continued for days, weeks, until the shack had become a home. At first those few wanderers who passed the knoll would shun him, cursing the man under their breaths for his hubris. But as his estate grew, and one building became two, and two became three, the people began to slow their steps, and it was not long before some took to joining him on that knoll, gathering stones, building new lives, new destinies. Thus they did without magics or machines, without boon or blessing. They relied on naught but their hands, their backs, their wills, and each other, and slowly house gave way to village, village to town, and town to nation. The man would one day die, as all men do, but those who remained continued his legacy, expanded upon it, and though his name was eventually forgotten, his spirit lives on to this day in the hearts of all Roseirians. Legend of the founder, Moss the Chronicler. Beastmen. A somewhat derogatory nomen given the collective group of demi-humanoid beings that includes goblins, orcs, and minotaurs among others, beastmen tend to differ from most wild creatures in demonstrating a distinct intelligence, possessing the capacity for spoken and sometimes even written language, as well as complex tool building, and many have developed unique, albeit simple, civilizations of their own. With civilization, however, will always come the desire to expand, and it is the ambition that has resulted in countless clashes with humanity over the centuries. Echoes. Strange clockwork constructs often encountered in fallen ruins. The question of whether or not they are truly alive is open to the debate, as they do not appear to require water, nor do they feed on the flesh of their victims as beasts do, and seemingly exist solely to protect their habitat from intruders. All echoes are encased in protective plating that is made from the same material as the ruins, and thus cannot be destroyed, though repeated blows will cause individual plates to dislodge, eventually causing the entire construct to collapse on itself. The Aegis. Dating back to antiquity, the term Aegai has historically been used to describe those ethereal entities that can be conjured by dominance. Aegis are capable of casting potent magics corresponding to the elemental alignment of their creators. Though unquestionably formidable, they will fade immediately should the dominant who gave them being happen to be slain. Ultima's Thralls. Twisted, glowing blue creatures that awaited Clive and Joe deep within Phoenix Gate to try and prevent them from gaining the innermost recesses of the apothecary. Alliance. Those who do not call the hideaway their home, but nevertheless lend their strength to Sid's cause. There are many in the Twins who balk at the persecution of bearers, but cannot find within them the courage to oppose it, knowing what fate awaits them should their sympathies be exposed. Others take that risk, aiding Sid's bearer liberation efforts with information sent by Stolas, monetary assistance, or direct action. The Spoony Bard. Traveling minstrels who journey from place to place, performing in whole streets across. Valueless there to the accompaniment of lute or lyre. They provide not only entertainment, but information on the state of the realm, of singing of significant events and important personages. The hideaway has its own resident bard, that the illiterate amongst its residents might remain informed. Sorry, I had to have a little bit of fun with that. Crystal fetters, a restraining device for bearers and dominants that uses precisely arranged and activated shards of crystal to disrupt the flow of ether through their flesh, thus preventing them from priming or casting magics. So valuable are the materials from which they are made, and so rare the skill required to craft them, There are very few specimens in existence, and they are only employed when absolutely necessary. Marks. Emblems that Cid's allies distribute to those in their circle of trust. It is common for rich and powerful of Valisthea to pin such marks to the bearers in their possession, that the slaves might go about their master's business unmolested. The orchestrion. A curious clockwork contraption that is able to perform several different musical compositions at the flick of a switch. And for many of those who come from Final Fantasy XIV, you will recognize this beautiful piece. Yeah, they took some liberties. Yoshitaka. Metia. Who does that remind you of, people? If you are from Final Fantasy XIV, you should recognize this name. Metia, aka Meteon. Our precious little bird. The burning red star that sits beneath the moon. Folklore ascribes to Metia the role of message bearer to the moon, so it is common custom across Valisthea to wish upon the star, that one's heartfelt desires might be conveyed to the heavens and beyond. And that much is true. We all know this. The Journal of Moss. The Annals of Moss the Chronicler, a scholar of Valisthean history, noted not only for his singular insight but for the lyricism of his writing, an exceptionalism that earned him the enmity of his fellow scholars and drove him from public life. Such were the misgivings towards him that only a handful of copies of the journal were ever produced, making the tome a prized find among collectors. Excuse me. The bestiary. Give me just a moment. Okay. Second icon of fire, Ifrit. A fire aspected icon that first emerged in the year of the realm 860, when Imperial forces attacked the Roseiryu stronghold of Phoenix Gate. Clad in infernal flame, the fiendish creature flung itself against the phoenix, overpowering the icon with a strength and ferocity never seen before or since. A fire-aspected icon that first emerged in the year of the realm 860, when Imperial forces attacked the Roseiryu stronghold of Phoenix Gate. Clad in infernal flame, the fiendish creature flung itself against the phoenix, overpowering the icon with a strength and ferocity never seen before. Its reappearance was to usher in a second shocking revelation, that its dominant was none other than Clive Rosfield. The Warden of Fire, the Phoenix. whose strength resides within Joshua Rosfield, heir to the Roseiryu throne. The phoenix is always born in the ducal line, and worshipped by the populace, not least because its flames of both destruction and regeneration have delivered the duchy from disaster many times over. The Warden of Fire, last seen on the night of the imperial invasion of Phoenix Gate in the year 860, when the young Joshua Rosfield lost control of his powers, the Phoenix first awakened among the motes of fire, an ancient tribe who dwelled in the western reaches of storm, and the careful preservation of bloodlines among the Roseiryu nobility ensured that its dominant would always be born in the ducal line. Shiva. One of my very few favorites that I love the most out of all icons. The Warden of Ice, whose appearance on the battlefield makes her enemy's blood run cold. The Iron Blood sent Shiva against the Republican forces in the Nysa Defile, where she dueled against Titan, the icon of Earth. Warden of Ice, whom Jill Warwick is the current dominant. With her glacial aspect and ability to conjure boreal boulders from the aether, Shiva's appearance on the battlefield makes her enemy's blood run cold. Ramu, Warden of Thunder, whose power most lately awakened within Sidolphus Telamon. The icon is known the realm over as a symbol of judgment, no doubt inspired by its sage mien and the scepter with which it summons its Levin bolts. Folklore has it that not only are dominants of Ramu blessed with the command of lightning, they are also granted a deeper understanding of the true nature of the world. Garuda, Warden of Wind, who Benedicta transformed into during her ill-fated flight from the Empire. It takes the form of a fearful harpy, summoning storms and tearing into the flesh of its prey and hawk-like talons. Such is the icon's frenzy for destruction that even allies of the dominant of the day are wont to begin fleeing the battlefield when dark clouds gather overhead. Its dominant is most often born among the descendants of the Motes of Wind, an ancient tribe that once dwelled in the land spanning the Strait of Altha, what is now the Crystalline Dominion. Titan, the Warden of Earth, whom Hugo Kupka is the current dominant. He takes the form of a stone-skinned giant whose granite fists shake the earth with every mighty pummel. Titan's dominant awakens among the peoples of Dalmatian deserts, the recipient of his strength being granted great power and status by the Republic in return for a commitment to the power to protect the nation in times of war. Bahamut, Warden of Light, whose power dwells within Dion the Sage, Prince of Sunbrock. In the Holy Empire, the Gregorian faith hold dragons to be sacred creatures, and Bahamut the most sacred of them all. Because of this, as well as the protection it grants them, the icon is loved and revered by the imperial populace. Odin, Warrior of Darkness, who rides into battle atop his spectral steed and whose black blade is said to be sharp enough to split the very seas in twain. His latest dominant, King Barnabas of Wallode. Chirada, an ethereal conjuration summoned forth by Benedicta Harmon when Clive encountered the dominant of Wind near Lostwing. Despite their size, the creature's heavily feathered wings did not seem to hamper its movement, which was disconcertingly nimble. More so than speed, though, it was Chirata's array of powerful magics that set it apart from lesser foes. Suparna, an ethereal creation of Benedicta Harmon, dominant of wind. When summoned in Cair Norvent alongside her twin, Chirata, the pair worked in tandem to attempt to overwhelm Cid and Clive, wielding a panoply of potent magics and deadly aerial assaults. Goblins, a common species of beastmen. While at first glance they may seem like mindless predators, goblins have their own unique language, and are skilled enough to both cast magics and make rudimentary tools and weapons. While mostly found on the continent of the Storm, the spread of the Blight had forced them to find homes nearby human settlements, a move that oft ends in misunderstanding and bloodshed. Gigas. As they are oft witnessed in the presence of goblins, many believe these lumbering brutes to be goblins themselves, albeit ones that have grown to prodigious size. Scholars, however, deny these claims and insist the two tribes are independent and their relationship a symbiotic one, with the Gigas providing protection to the slighter goblins, who, in turn, provide the craftless giants with sundry arms and vestures, such as the charnel carcanets created from the bones of their victims. The spread of the Blight has seen both tribes impinge on human territory with increased frequency, and recent spottings having put them as close to civilization as 3 reeds in Rosaria. The Orcs, a warlike yet surprisingly organized species of beastmen native to Ash. They have long been in conflict with the Walloders over control of the continent, and currently count the bulk of its eastern half as their own. However, the encroaching Blight continues to eat into the amount of livable land, making the fight for more territory ever more vital. Minotaurs, towering beastmen that combine the heads of oxen with bodies eerily human. Minotaurs are abnormally aggressive, a trait that suggests that little man remains within the beast, and they roam grassy meadows of Rosaria, doling out violence seemingly indiscriminately with their crude, yet massive clubs. Despite the obvious danger, however, hunters still actively seek out these menaces for their lustrous manes, which often command exorbitant prices at market. Vampire thorns. While most flora is thought of as stationary, roots binding them to the soil upon which their matron seed first fell, there are some species which have an uncanny capacity for locomotion, species such as northern storm's vampire thorn, instead of drawing nutriment from the earth. These pitcher-like plants hide themselves in the undergrowth where they wait for prey to haply stumble by, at which time they rush out, emitting a foul cloud of mind-numbing pollen and vicious sap to disorient the victim, while they strike and strangulate it with a pair of frighteningly long vines. Marbles, everybody's favorite. The foul cocktail of bile and partially digested prey that accumulates within these giant carnivorous plants. Bellies makes the breath so spectacularly rancid that it can be used as a weapon to repel would-be attackers. Marbles favor more humid climes, such as those found on the volcanic isles of the Iron Kingdom. However, the spread of the Blight has driven the mobile flora to cooler areas, such as the swamps of Rosaria. Hornets. Most commonly found in the woodlands of Rosaria and western Sembrook. Hornets are oft mistaken for birds due to their prodigious size. This mistake, however, can prove deadly, for the overgrown insects are extremely territorial and highly aggressive, and will attack aught that might venture near their hive, using stingers laden with a poison potent enough to subdue creatures as large as a wyvern. Black widows. Unlike many arachnids which use gossamer webbing to ensnare their victims, black widows prefer instead to cling silently to trees and cliffs and await the passing of an animal elbow. I meant to say below. The passing of an animal below, at which time they leap down and assault their prey with hooked limb and caustic spit. They prefer dark, cool environments and as such are rarely seen in Valestea's southern deserts. Megalocrabs, making a habitat of waters both fresh and brackish. These goodly crustaceans spend most of their time buried in the mud, where they warm their sanguine humors as they wait for a potential meal to wander by. Since the time of the founding, the peoples of Roseiryu have hunted megalocrabs for its sweet, succulent flesh and creamy family. The species having long been known amongst the small folk as fire crab for the bright red color and phoenix-like patterns which emerge on the shells after boiling.
Welcome to the FF16 bestiary. I need to borrow her. Be right back.
Okay, continuing on. Crayclaws. Found mostly in and around the lakes and rivers of Sunbrook and Rosaria, these deadly predators are equipped with scissor-like pincers with which to dismember and eviscerate their prey. If that were not enough, the creatures take in water from their habitat to create highly corrosive juices in their bellies, which they then spit out onto their victim's flesh to soften it, making it easier to consume. And another favorite of everybody's, chocobos! Favored steeds of the people of Valistea, while they are mainly bred for riding, some are used to pull wagons and some are even eaten. But the boldest and bravest are put forward for use by the military. They are intelligent and fiercely loyal creatures and tend to tolerate only their master's attention. Wild chocobos are no less vigilant and will readily attack anyone who they perceive to be a threat. Anyone who isn't carrying a fistful of Gaishal greens, that is. Vultures, opportunistic avians that, like many other predatory birds, prefer to stealthily swoop down on foes from above and skewer them with their razor-sharp beaks. Though they are thought to primarily feed on carrion, traveling in large flocks in search of the dead and dying, it is not uncommon for vultures to attack living prey when times are lean. If you happen to hear their eerily human-like caws, squawks, and warbles, it is best to find cover and quickly. Oh, sorry. Wolves. Individually lacking in both strength and speed to subdue prey of any considerable size, wolves will instead hunt in packs, communicating amongst one another as men might, so as to overwhelm their victims, and while forever wary of other creatures, some breeds have been found to be more willing to form bonds with humankind, and thus can be found everywhere from traveling menageries to elite infantry units in the imperial army. Following rumors of children being mauled by the wolves, the duchy ordered a mass culling of the beasts, which saw their numbers in Rosario reduced to almost none. Bighorns, found to graze primarily in the emerald meadows of Rosaria or the windswept savannas of Dalmatia. Bighorns are easily recognized by the eponymous growths, the length of which can oft exceed several score hands, that just sidewise from their crowns. These horns, as well as their hard-wearing hides, are prized throughout Valistea. and can be bought and sold at marketplaces all over the realm. Caution, however, is recommended when hunting the creatures, as they are highly territorial and will charge relentlessly at anything that they might stray into their line of sight. Adamantois. Enormous creatures with nigh impermeable and oddly fertile shells that play host to diverse flora that provide the painfully conspicuous reptiles with much-needed camouflage in the bogs and fens they call their homes. At a glance, these lumbering giants may not appear much of a threat, but at the first sign of danger they will retract their heads and the limbs and whip themselves into frenetic spins that have been known to flatten their entire homes. Dragonets, lesser dragons known for their nimbleness in flight. Those specimens of the Samberquois subspecies known more commonly as the worm or worm are somewhat easily tamed, and as such widely employed in battle by the imperial legions. Avises, middling dragons whose membranous wings are attached to their forelegs rather than their torsos, and end in hook-like talons used to rip apart the flesh of their prey. Their abundance in northwestern storm eventually resulted in mass domestication by the Imperial Legion which, alongside the spreading of the Blight, drove remaining populations south into the deserts of Dhalmekia where they now struggle for supremacy with existing species. Fafnir of the North, an ancient dragon adapted exclusively for life on the ground and as such is encased in a thick bony armor. Though its kin once claimed dominion over the northern territories, the spread of the Blight inevitably forced this once gentle giant south in search of prey. Another common one among the Final Fantasy series, bombs! Floating masses of self-contained flame, found across both Storm and Ash, these creatures lack the flesh with which we associate with typical fauna, leading scholars of the natural world to posit that they are not descended of any beast, but rather ungodly creations of the fallen. By suppressing their internal furnaces, bombs can allow their bodies to cool and harden until appearing not more than simple stones, unworthy of remark. It is in this form that they hunt their prey, waiting until an unfortunate soul has stumbled upon their place of rest before rising from the ground to spew forth fiery gouts of death. Oddly, should the prey fight back, the bomb will not flee, but rather combust spontaneously, sacrificing its own life to save the flock. Iron Giants. Oversized suits of armor animated by lost fallen magics, deceptively swift despite their size, they wield both sword and shield skillfully and effectively, while the otherworldly plate which surrounds their vulnerable cores provide them with a nigh impenetrable defense. Stolasses. Owls, capable of transmitting the thoughts of others, specifically those with whom they are attuned. In response to an ancient incantation, their lithified third eyes store these thoughts in the form of ether, allowing them to be passed on as and when required, though only to the intended recipient. Stolasses are mainly kept by royals, nobles, and other figures of authority for the purpose of sending secret or urgent messages, and are seldom available to common folk. The incantation O mia los enlan tu isag elith can be loosely translated as My will is now thy burden. Ne'er cleft our bond shall be. And for that is all for now on the compiled knowledge of the 1,000 tomes. Until the next video.